occurred to me that Rhoda might have told you a detail or two which she hadn't remembered when she talked with me. You see, she was the last to see the little Dago boy alive.
Are you sure of that?
Yes.
Oh, I hadn't realized.
About an hour after we arrived at the estate, one of the older pupils came on Rhoda and the Dago boy at the far end of the grounds. The boy was upset and crying, and Rhoda was standing in front of him, blocking his path. The older girl was among the trees, and neither child saw her. She was just about to intervene when Rhoda shoved the boy and snatched at his metal. But he broke away and ran down the beach in the direction of the old wharf where he was later found. Rhoda followed him, not running, just walking along, taking her time, the older girl said.
Has it occurred to you that the older girl might not be telling the truth?
Oh, that isn't likely. She was one of the monitors, was appointed to keep an eye on the younger children. She's 15, and she's been with us since kindergarten days. No, Mrs. Penmark, she was telling precisely what she saw. We know her well.
And this was the last time Claude was seen?
Yes. A little later, it might have been about noon, one of the guards saw Rhoda coming off the wharf. He shouted a warning, but by then she was on the beach again, and he decided to forget the matter. The guard didn't identify the girl by name, but she was wearing a red dress. And Rhoda was the only girl who wore a dress that day. At 1 o'clock, the lunch bell rang, and Claude was missing when the toll was called. You know the rest, I think.
Yes, but this is very serious. If Rhoda was on the wharf...
Not serious, really, when you've seen as much of how children behave as I have. Children conceal things from adults. Suppose Rhoda did follow the Dago child onto the wharf. So many things could have happened, quite innocently. He may have concealed himself in the old boathouse, and then, when discovered, may have backed away from Rhoda and fallen in the water.
Yes, that could have happened.
Now, Claude, although he was frail, was an excellent swimmer, and of course, Rhoda knew that. Once he was in the water, she would have expected him to swim ashore. How could she know that the treacherous pilings were at that exact spot where he fell?
No, she couldn't possibly.
Perhaps the thought in Rhoda's mind when he fell in the water was that he'd ruin his new suit, and she'd get a scolding for causing it. When he didn't swim ashore at once, she may have thought, with the logic of childhood, that he'd hidden under the wharf to frighten her, or to escape her. Later on, when it was too late to do anything, she was afraid to admit what had happened.
Then you think Rhoda knows something that she's not saying?
Yes, I think like many a frightened soldier, she deserted under fire. This is not a serious charge. Few of us are courageous when tested.
She has lied, though.
Is there any adult who hasn't lied? Smooth the lines from your brow, my dear. You're so much prettier when you're smiling.
I'll question Rhoda.
I wish you would, though I doubt you'll learn more than you know.
Miss Fern, there's something I want to ask you. There was a floral tribute at Claude's funeral sent by the children of the Fern School. I suppose the children shared in the expense, but I haven't been asked to pay anything, any part of it.
The tribute wasn't as nearly so expensive as the papers seem to think. The money has been collected and the flowers paid for.
Perhaps you telephoned me and I was out?
No, my dear. We thought perhaps you'd want to send flowers individually.
But why should we have sent flowers individually? Rhoda wasn't friendly with the boy, and my husband and I have never met the Daigles.
I don't know. My dear, there are three of us, you know, and in the hurry of making decisions.
You make excuses for Rhoda, and then you admit that you didn't ask for my help to pay for the flowers. And the reasons you give for not asking are obviously specious. Does this mean, in your mind and in the mind of your sisters, there was some connection between the Daigles boy's death and Rhoda's presence on the wharf?
Oh, I refuse to believe there's any connection.
And yet you've acted as if there were.
Yes, perhaps we have.
This is a terrible tragedy for Mrs. Daigle, as you say. She has lost her only child. But if there were any shadow over Rhoda from what has happened, I shall have to live under it, and my husband too. As for Rhoda, she would not be happy in your school next year.
No, she would not. And since she would not, it would be as well to make up our minds now that she will not be there.
Then there is a shadow over her, and you have already decided not to invite her back?
We have made that decision.
But you can't tell me why.
I think her behavior in the matter of the meadow would be sufficient explanation. She has no sense of fair play. She's a poor loser. She doesn't play the game.
But you're not saying that Rhoda had anything to do with the Daigle boy's death.
Of course not. Such a possibility never entered our minds.